What is up, Star Wars Destiny fans? Welcome to episode 2 of Cantina Brawl, a Star Wars Destiny podcast by T3 Gaming. My name is Symbio, and I am joined today by my co-hosts, Cooney and Nathan. How's it going, guys?
Yo.
It's going good. How are you?
I am good. I'm excited to talk about this. Today, we have a very special guest all the way from Berkeley, California, Mr. Corwin Sanchez from the Roll On podcast. Thank you so much, Corwin, for joining us today. How are you doing today?
Hey, I'm good, Symbio. Thanks so much for having me on.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. I'm glad we could finally get you in connection with T3. We did some fun recording of videos the other night, so this is it's great to have you on this podcast. Corwin is the co-host of the Roll On podcast, if you don't already know or listen to that awesome podcast with his brother Kevin. Corwin, tell us a little bit about Roll On, just a little intro about what you guys do and where to find you guys. I'd love to spread the word to anybody who doesn't already know about your good content.
Yeah, thanks so much. So Kevin and I, as you mentioned, we've got a little podcast going. We've been around for about 4 months now. And essentially, it started with this text conversation that we had going between him and myself and our father. The three of us just talk Destiny all the time. And in those conversations, Kevin and I were always sparring with each other about cards or decks or whatever. And eventually, our dad was like, you guys got to get this on audio. So we decided to record some thoughts and do a little content, and it's worked out. So we basically have two kind of competing mindsets. Kevin's more of a casual player. I tend to lean more competitive. So we have both sides that we like to present in our content, and that allows us to kind of talk about everything we want to. And so between that and just kind of teasing each other and fighting each other a little bit and arguing like brothers do, we've had a lot of fun with it. So we're on iTunes. If you want to download us from there, you can find us on Apple Podcasts. We also post on Shout Engine every week when we record. So you can find us there. We're on Twitter at RollOnSWD, and certainly we've gotten a lot of good feedback so far, and we appreciate all the listeners out there.
Yeah, I really enjoy it. You guys have been really consistent with coming out with episodes pretty much every week almost now, which is great because there's been kind of like a little bit of variance in the Destiny content creator community. So it's nice to have some good stuff coming out.
Yeah, we definitely try to keep it consistent. Weekly has been our goal. Life gets in the way sometimes, but for the most part, we're able to stick to that. And kudos to you as well. You T3 guys are doing a great job as well, putting your content out regularly. And I'm really enjoying all your videos for sure.
Awesome. Thanks so much. Yeah, we're excited to start this new podcast, and we'll hopefully try to be consistent. It is definitely a lot of work, but we're going to do our best here. So today, and what we talked about with Cantina Brawl is our big push here for content is to try to focus on topic-based episodes. So like we're not going to really cover tournament and news and meta decks necessarily, but that could be just because there's a lot of other great content out there, and we kind of want to just do something a little different. So today we're doing an episode on faction identity, and faction identity is something that me and Nifty Nick had talked a lot about, trying to understand a little bit about what the factions are and what they bring uniquely to the game. And to this episode, we're going to cover just the heroes. So we're going to talk a little bit about what are the three factions. One of the factions is Force or Blue. And then we've got the Command faction, right, which is red. And then we also have the Rogue faction, which is yellow. And those are the three primary factions. And then you have hero affiliation, neutral affiliation, or villain affiliation. So why don't you guys, I'd like to hear real quick from, let's have our guest tell us a little bit about what faction means to you and in terms of Star Wars Destiny, and whether you think, having some kind of identity, meaning, for example, that's for new players, like if a new player jumps in and says, well, what colors do I want to play? Is it important for each color to bring something unique to the table? So go ahead, Corwin. What do you think?
Oh, you're starting with me. All right.
Yeah, I'm going to start with you, buddy.
All right. So, I think it's a fantastic aspect to the game. And, Kevin and I always tease each other because he's more into theme than I am. I'm just more into what's good. But I will say, with these different faction identities that we're going to talk about, I think it's awesome that each kind of has its own staples, its own unique mechanics that it brings to the table when it comes to Destiny. And I'm all for it. So I think it's a really exciting way to take it. And I would much prefer it being like this than to a situation where all of the colors just kind of did the same thing and there wasn't anything that really stood out amongst any of them.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, I've definitely heard some people argue otherwise. How about you, Cooney? Do you like the fact that there's, like certain factions do specific things, or would you kind of like want to have the same tools? Like, are you ever pissed that like one color doesn't have like this tool? Like, I know people used to be really annoyed. I think, Nathan, you might have been one of those people who would complain about deflect and said, well, why the hell does blue hero get deflect, but blue villain didn't get it, or, somebody else didn't get it?
I actually kind of like it. I mean, I don't like how every faction has their own little gimmicky stuff, but I do. It would be really boring if every class had access to everything, because there would be no reason to play any diversity in the decks at all, because everyone would just run multiple versions of the same card, just in a different faction. So it would get very stale very fast.
Yeah. Well, how about you, Nathan?
Yeah, I agree. I think, being able to, I don't really play the blue heroes all that much because I don't really like the way they play, which is nice because that's a whole like set of cards that I don't have to play, and it's just that one set. And as far as the whole deflect thing went, that was like way long ago.
Yeah, like 2 years ago.
Yeah, but no, I think factions are a great thing. It makes the game interesting. It makes you, building a deck, having to build against, I mainly play red and yellow, having to play against blue, which has a lot of ways to manipulate dice, makes me have to build my red and yellow deck to kind of counter that, which I really like.
Yeah, I agree. I think that one of the most fun parts of Star Wars Destiny is sort of kind of looking at how each of the factions bring different mechanics to the game. So, but yeah, I just wanted to get your guys' take on that. And I think for the new players, it might be kind of cool to hear about what what is your favorite faction? If you had to pick one faction, what would be your favorite? Let's start with you, Nathan. What's your favorite faction? Pick just one. Like affiliation and faction.
My favorite faction would definitely be Red Villain.
Right on. How about you, Cooney?
I'm torn. Whatever mills better.
What did you say?
Put it that way. Whatever mills better.
That's a good point. Yeah, and we'll talk about that a little bit. How about you, Corwin?
Oh, for me, it's Hero Red, Symbio. You know that, buddy.
Yep, I figured, but nobody else knows about the GOAT yet. We're going to introduce a lot of people to the GOAT today. So, all right, let's get into this. We're going to go through each of these factions for heroes and just kind of give you what our take is on what we think the play style is for that faction. Maybe if you're new to Star Wars Destiny and you're coming into this, what do I want to play? Because you really don't need to play everything. Like, honestly, like, unless you really want to collect this game, go out and buy everything. That's cool. I do that. I love that. That way I can build all different kinds of things. But there's a lot of colors, and like, I don't play a lot of villains, but I do sometimes. So you don't have to do everything, and hopefully this video or podcast will help you understand a little bit of that. So first we're going to talk about the blue heroes. Now, blue heroes, of course, are one of the most iconic, if not the most iconic, in the Star Wars universe. So we're going to take a look real quick first. I've got the characters up here that we're talking about, or we're looking at on if you're watching the video. But let's talk real quick about what do blue heroes, the Force heroes, bring in terms of their play style. For what I'm going to do is just kind of review what I think first, and basically I feel like blue heroes are all about melee damage, shield focus, so they can get a lot of shields to block damage. They have a lot of melee damage primarily. I don't think there's a lot of hero blue, or there's very little blue hero range damage actually, unless it's in a support or something. I think the main play style for blue heroes is all about mid-late game decks. You're building up upgrades. You can redeploy those upgrades if somebody, it's kind of like teaching Jedis, you know, training and that kind of thing. Shielding up so that you can last as long as you can, and using abilities like focus and being able to turn dice, like using the force to turn your dice to do more consistent damage. One of the other components that we talk about is mitigation, which is being able to mitigate dice. And something that happens with blue heroes is that they have to use their character dice often to mitigate dice. So there are cards like Guard that require you to use the die or remove a die to do something. So let's go ahead and I guess I'll swing it over to Cooney, since you've played a little bit of Blue Hero. Does that sound about right to you? Do you have anything to add about kind of what Blue Heroes kind of bring to the table?
Sure. I'll just emphasize a couple points you made. So honestly, I believe that Blue Heroes are the king of mitigation. Just because their utilities, yes, while they do require some of them to actually use up your own die, but the value you gain out of that die is usually immensely high. Other than that, as you said, yeah, they usually have some of the highest health, some of the best damage sides, and honestly, they have some of the best utility characters in the game.
Yeah, so let's go through, in this quick example, some of what I felt like were the top examples of blue heroes. We've got Luke Skywalker from the Way of the Force. He's all about resolving shield size as melee damage, so he can shield up, he tanks out, he's got focus, he's got a power action that moves abilities from him to another blue character. So again, talking about redeploying weapons or training or moving those abilities over. And then, of course, we got one of our favorites, Yoda, the Wizened Master. He is probably the, if not the most important support character in blue, being able to get a 2 focus side, and then just, you know, his ability to use the special chaining to either gain a resource, get a shield, or discard the top of the deck. You can't really beat him in terms of a support character. So again, being able to turn dice the sides that you need is really big part of what Blue Hero does. And then last, you got Anakin Skywalker, a neutral card from the Rivals draft set. He is an example of a neutral blue hero where he's got a special that says discard a hero card to give a character 2 shields or a villain card to deal 2 damage. So example there of how faction identity is expressing itself through shields if you're a hero, damage if you're a villain. Pretty straightforward. But essentially, one of the reasons I love Blue Hero is because I like that tankiness. I don't like to put characters on the table where I feel like they're going to just get taken out immediately. I like to have a more of a mid-late game where they build up and eventually they, you know, do so much damage they overwhelm you with the number of dice in the pool. So you've got Qui-Gon Jinn's lightsaber, a new one from across the galaxies, and he allows you. He has an ability that allows you to put another shield on him after that character has taken some damage. So it's another good example of what blue heroes do best. They're able to, you know, even if they're taking damage, they can get more shields. And if you look at all of the blue upgrades, they almost always have a shield side on them, and then in addition to a resource. You also have Obi-Wan Kenobi's lightsaber, who's also has two shield sides, a 2 melee, and then its special says give attached character shield and then deal unblockable damage to the character equal to the number of shields. So you're gaining a shield and then doing damage based on the shields that you get. And that is definitely a primary theme behind blue heroes, which I like. Lastly, you got a neutral blue upgrade, the Shoto lightsaber, which also gives you a shield when you activate as long as you have another blue weapon in the pool. So that is probably one of the most biggest blue neutral upgrades that has been released yet. Let's go ahead and move on to some of the supports, and it's funny, like blue doesn't really have a lot of like die-based supports because they don't have vehicles. So they mainly use supports in order to give them shields, reduce the cost of upgrades like It Binds All Things, or do things like, you know, increase the number of weapons. We've got Luke's Protection, which gives you a shield. Then another example is R2-D2, which allows you to turn a die to any side and draw a card. And then you also have Honed Skills, which is a support from Way of the Force, which allows you to have more than one upgrade, or each of your characters can have one additional upgrade. So, what do you guys think about blue hero supports and like how they differ from other colors? Corwin, why don't we get a little your input on this compared to red? Like, what do you think blue hero maybe is doing differently than red?
Well, a lot of the red hero supports are vehicle based, right? Because that's kind of that's one of your themes of red on both sides, really, hero and villain, is more of a vehicle support type setup. So with blue, your supports are more focused on things like shields. You know, Luke's Protection does that. Your eyes can deceive you, I think it's called. The one that will blank dice when you roll shields. And then, of course, It Binds All Things, helping with your economy. Yeah, the blue supports kind of they help support your characters more, whereas the red supports are kind of your those in weapons. You're driving it. Yeah. So I think that's kind of the difference there. But you know, R2-P2 is still my favorite deck I've ever played in Destiny, and so I certainly have an appreciation for blue supports, and particularly R2. He's got a special place in my heart. He's my favorite Star Wars character. So this R2 that we've got up here is awesome, and it's great to see that he can do so many of the things that we've already mentioned.
Yeah, being able to draw a card is also something that's kind of been getting into since Jeremy started designing Blue Hero. Seems to be giving more card draw mechanics. I mean, although Luke Skywalker from Awakenings was the first kind of card draw, so maybe that was something they started with from the beginning.
Yeah, and they've printed several events in blue that allow you to draw pretty aggressively now, and so it's definitely becoming more and more of a common mechanic in blue. But I really do feel like the shields and the support of these different cards that we've been talking about, lending the support to the characters, keeping the characters alive, and allowing them to dish out these powerful amounts of damage is what blue really excels at.
Well, very well said. Yeah. And let's go ahead and dive into some of these events to finish out Hero Blue and how they express themselves in terms of mitigation and control, really. Like, because every faction, you're going to have elements of gaining resources, mitigation, turning dice, healing, all this kind of stuff. And what heroes do best is get shields. So one of my favorite cards from Spirit of Rebellion, when this card dropped, I was just so happy because it is so good for what you get. Caution, which says remove one of your character dice to give another character 3 shields. And you got Obi-Wan kind of like telling Anakin to calm down, and you know, it's like he says, you know, don't get into the fight, just step back. So you like remove that character die and get 3 shields, and it feels so good to play that card. And then next you have another theme in Blue Hero, which is Ataru Strike, being able to take damage or do damage based on the number of shields you have. So another card we don't have up here is Riposte, but that is one of my favorite cards where you can immediately just do the number of damage based on the shields. Well, Ataru Strike is a 1-cost blue event. It says resolve one of your blue character dice, showing melee damage increasing its value by the number of shields on that character. So again, if you have shields, then you're able to do more damage. So if you're fully protected, very good with the new Qui-Gon. And then lastly, we have a neutral card called Alter, which is a 2-cost. It just says turn up to 2 dice the size of your choice. So Blue Hero, just having cards that immediately turn dice. And I'd like to kind of get you guys' opinion, because I didn't do a lot of research on this, and this is not restricted to Blue Hero, but it is a blue type effect. Are there other cards in yellow and red that like allow you to immediately just turn dice? And if they tend to have more restrictions, right?
And basically, other factions. Off the top of my head, I know red has a lot of Like if they're showing a damage, you can turn yours to damage, or if you're showing damage, you can turn it someone else's to a blank, or some weird effect like that that actually has that restrictive purpose on it. But I don't, top of my head, I can't think of any yellow cards that actually, outside of what, the new one? No, that restricts. No, I guess it's the same thing. That new support that allows you to remove a
improvised defense.
There you go.
Yeah, that's so that's interesting because yellow, like, yeah, you're right. Like when I think about yellow, there's not anything that I can think of at the top of my head that just immediately turns dice like blue does. So I think that's, and like you said, in red, there are things that you have to have like range damage showing or something else going on in order to do that. So I love that. I love that about blue, that you know, if you need that consistency, there's a card you can play to get that consistency. So.
Right.
And it's even built into one of the new characters now, symbiote with Barris, because Barris, when you turn a die, you can turn her die just by her ability. So we're even expanding into that territory now too, where it's built into characters in addition to just being part of these really nice events that we're seeing.
Yeah, very, very good point. That Barris is a new character that I'd love to try to play. And remember, there's also is it Jedi Instructor that allows you to turn a die to a side showing one of her sides?
Yeah, yes. When she rolls in, you flip a die to a matching side base, another character die to a matching side that she rolled.
Right. So that kind of a similar thing, but Barris does it a little better. And nobody really played Jedi Instructor, sadly. But, you know, maybe we'll see more of those. But that is definitely one of the blue themes. Okay, great. So that is pretty much Blue Hero. You know, I'd love to hear you guys. If you guys have more feedback on that, let us know in the comments on the video or shoot us an email. I'd love to hear more takes if we missed anything about Blue Hero. But if you like tanky decks to generate lots of shields and have kind of direct damage and have consistency in the ability to turn those dice to the size you need, I think blue's the way to go. All right, so we're going to actually turn this over to Corwin, who loves Red Hero, and I gave him kind of the idea here to go through and pick out some of the cards he thought represented the Red Hero faction, command faction, very well. So I'll turn it over to you, Corwin.
Great. Yeah, well, we can't have a discussion about Red Hero, guys, without starting with the GOAT. All right. So if for anyone who has listened to Roll On, you'll know that I often refer to my boy Poe Dameron, more than a pilot, as the GOAT in Destiny, the greatest of all time. He is my favorite Destiny character. And he is just a menace out there. What Red Hero is really trying to do is it's mostly range damage. But it really wants the battlefield because it wants to make a lot of plays based off of tempo. And it's also very well supported or very well supports a vehicle deck. There's a lot in red that helps with vehicles, and it also heals better than any other faction in the game. Now, Poe is one of those kind of, to me, he's a jack of all trades character, and that's why I love him. He does damage. He helps focus your dice, and actually Red Hero has a lot of focus in it as well, just like blue. He makes money. He gives shields. Like he does it all. He is the man. So play some Poe if you want to have a good time.
He's a leader. You know, he's a really good leader, right?
He's an amazing leader. Biggs is one of these new characters we've just got in Across the Galaxy that kind of hits on a couple of big themes in red, mainly because of his ability. On top of being able to do some range damage, he allows your supports to activate when he activates. And, you know, what do we a lot of times say about supports? Well, they're slow and you got to get them in the pool. And Biggs kind of helps with that because when he rolls in, you can roll in a vehicle and then you can re-roll any number of that vehicle's support and mod dice, which is pretty nice as well. So there are a lot of nice tempo plays to be made with Biggs if you are indeed running vehicles. And so it kind of hits on both of those aspects there. And then Lobot's in there just because, again, having the battlefield is so key for Hero Red. With Lobot, you can actually give him Guardian when you control the battlefield. And that's something that we all have seen can do some pretty nice work at times. So these are three really cool characters, and of course, Poe is the man. He's the leader, but that kind of just shows what Hero Red is really trying to do from a character perspective. I happen to think that when you control the battlefield in Hero Red, you can do some of the greatest things possible in this game, and
yes.
And a lot of that is event based, and we'll see that here soon. But I'm not sure what you have next up here, Symbio. If it's the supports, it's the upgrades, even better.
Let's not forget though that Biggs has the best last name in all of the galaxy.
Darklighter.
I will not fight you on that. That is a
and that stash.
Yeah, Darklighter, pretty sick.
Mr. and Mrs. Darklighter. Wouldn't that be nice? Wouldn't that be nice? Yeah, no, I think, and what's funny is there's not a lot of red. Okay, so is there any red hero melee? I'm just spacing.
K2SO.
Oh yes, that's right, K2. Yeah, but very little. So it's mostly all about range damage, vehicles, that kind of thing. So yeah, tell us about the upgrades here.
Yeah, well, again, we can't start without talking about something Poe related. So, Poe's Blaster. Poe's Blaster, to me, on Poe is probably the best 2-cost weapon in the game, simply because of the sides you get. Although this new handheld cannon we see over there on the right might give it a run for its money. But Poe's Blaster, just incredible on Poe. The fact that you can special chain into that special and do 3 damage right away is absolutely disgusting. And just a great overall weapon for Hero Red. Rex's Blaster Pistol, again, this is one of those cards that really shines when you have the battlefield, because when that pistol is out, you can activate another one of your characters besides the one that this gun is on. And I love doing this to great effect with ambush effects like hit and run and quick draw and drop in, and some of these cards that let me activate characters with ambush. Being able to do that with multiple characters at once and then resolve a bunch of dice is really a staple of Hero Red. So Rex's Blaster Pistol shines in that regard. And then this new handheld LS1 cannon, aka the Leia cannon, or whatever it is that people are calling it. Boy, does this thing pack a punch, guys.
This thing is amazing. Wow. Yeah.
Have we seen these kind of damage sides on a 2-cost weapon before? I don't think so.
No way. It's got three sides on it. I mean, even if you overconfidence this thing, you're going to lose,
Who cares that your upgrade limit's decreased? I mean, if you can get this kind of damage out of one die, that more than makes up for it. So I think this is an outstanding weapon, and is going to be in a lot of red decks here in the future.
Besides, in my experience, most red aggressive decks generally don't have more than 2 weapons out anyway.
Yeah, that's a fair point. And
not
also,
unless you're bringing yellow or something to the table too.
True.
Right, but also I'm particularly interested to see what this can do in a vehicle deck, because typically in vehicle decks, and particularly Hero Red ones, you're not really running any upgrades. So if you drop a handheld cannon on the person that's least likely to be targeted, you're never gonna have to worry about an upgrade limit anyway.
Right.
And the damage sides are a good complement to a lot of the vehicle damage sides that heroes have. So I don't know. I think it's a great card.
I think it's interesting how FFG chooses which things to make neutral. Like, I mean, obviously, if you have unique weapons like Rex's Blaster, that's going to be hero and stuff. But do you feel like this is are you happy this is neutral, and do you like it when, like, the DH? But the DH-17 was that neutral, or was that was hero, right?
No, that's neutral as well.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's a great comparison, actually, Symbio, because DH-17, for one resource, the value you get from that gun is incredible. For one, and I think it's the same with this cannon. You're getting a really nice bang for your buck for your resources. And so, yes, I am glad that this gun is neutral, because if it was one way or the other, it would lean heavily on that side's favor if this thing came down.
Well, I mean, come on. There's a Vader's Fist out there for blue villains that, heroes don't get. But,
well, but at least it costs 5.
Yeah.
This cannon's something anyone can drop on round.
Yeah. I think it's interesting though, because thematically it makes sense that red should get really good blasters, right? Like, so for even like, sure, we think lightsabers are really powerful, but a really good blaster can do more damage, you know? And I think that expresses itself here.
It's always an interesting debate to think about whether blasters or lightsabers or melee weapons rather are better in terms of damage. And I just think, I honestly think it probably shakes out to about even when all is said and done. Just because, you know, each of them do different things and they can basically add up to the same results from a damage perspective, in my mind.
Yeah, I mean,
Right.
but if you, like, for example, if you compare a Shoto lightsaber to Rex's blaster pistol, they're the same cost, but a Shoto has like a 1, and a +2 melee, and this is a 2, and a 2 indirect. So, you know, like, overall, it seems like the blasters are getting more damage for the money, you know?
Right.
Well,
and-
go ahead.
sorry. Yeah, in that extent, the older melee weapons in blue, there were always higher numbers in the damage sides, but there were always 3 costs, most of them. In this case, there's a lot of good guns that have lower value, but the keyword that I have not seen very many melee weapons have, I think it's only one has it, ambush. That's
Right.
so quick.
Yeah, and there aren't. I mean, I don't think there aren't that many. Is there a blue weapon that has? I'm sorry, a red weapon that has ambush? I don't think so. There's a redeploy.
Sure.
A280 has redeploy.
Yeah, I don't think there's one in Hero. At least I can't think of one right now.
Yeah. So anyway, yeah, let's go ahead and move on, Core, and talk about a little bit what the supports are doing in Red Hero.
Yeah, so as we mentioned before, the supports are really vehicle-based. So Rally Aid is just Rally Aid is just an incredible resource for Hero.
So good.
It's one of the most incredible cards in the game. Being able to get repeatedly every time you use it, at least one resource. That's the thing that really makes it to me is, yeah, you get a 2 cost reduction on a vehicle if you hit a vehicle, and most times that's what you're going to get. But you could get any other card for 1 less. So it's basically like and it binds all things or a Streetwise, but for any card, you know?
Yep. Yeah.
Which is kind of crazy.
Very powerful.
So I really think that Rally Aid is where it starts and ends. Well, maybe not where it ends, but definitely where it starts for Hero Red supports. C-3PO is one of the most insane droids and one drop supports that we've seen because of just the way he can basically turn any die into anything.
Mm-hmm.
And particularly help with, getting to specials, getting to, turning damage into discard or disrupt even, or shields. There's just so much utility built into C-3PO. I would love it if they reprinted him and we got him again for the next block. But he is really powerful, so that would be tough. But I don't know. I think he's definitely a staple of Hero Red. And then on the neutral side, Bubble Shield. This is especially going to be relevant as we get ready for rotation. A lot more decks are going to be doing indirect damage, and the ability to pay 1 resource to basically knock out 3 damage or prevent 3 damage to your characters seems pretty good to me. So it's a nice little trade-off.
And it's an example of how red isn't like in this support variation, the mitigation isn't really through direct mitigation. It's like absorbing damage, just like healing, it's kind of like dealing with damage in a different way,
Yeah, I mean, we don't have it listed on here, but there, Honor Guard does that, paying the 1 to basically remove a die showing damage. Suppressive Fire is a card now that can help with getting character dice out of there. So yes, it's kind of doing that sort of supporting, healing type thing where it's bolstering the character's ability to live long.
And Suppressive Fire is the first kind of trigger card that happened regardless of whether it was your action or not, where you could actually remove dice without having to take an action to do it. So that's definitely kind of another red sort of hero thing to do. Like it's sort of fast in a different way, right? Though a little bit different than the way yellow's fast,
It is, and it's now more important than ever in a meta where Vader is starting to evolve, because it's one of the only answers we have to actually dealing with his dice and not allowing him to power action.
Right, exactly. I saw that the other day. I didn't even think about that, because if suppressive fire triggers, it's not actually during your opponent's turn, so they can't power action to bring the die back in.
Exactly.
It's also very good against Thrawn in that if you can get it out early enough and wait for the right time, you know, in the beginning, you can at least keep one of his dice from coming out, you know, which could be powerful. But so let's, yeah, tell us a little bit more about Command Hero Red events and what they do.
Yeah, so this is a good splash here, these three. Basically, as I said before, we haven't touched on it too much in this discussion, but healing is something that Hero Red does better than any other color and faction. So cards like First Aid here, Field Medic from Awakenings, Mend from Legacies, these are all cards that can help your characters heal damage after they've already taken it, which can definitely be an effective way to keep them alive, especially when, you know, you're up against action cheating decks, or even, you know, Vader, where you're going to be punished for removing his dice anyway. This is another way to go that Hero Red offers you. So I always really love that mechanic in Destiny. And then again, coming back to the vehicles and battlefield idea here, Aerial Advantage is just an insane card. I mean, I'm definitely curious to hear what your three's thoughts on this are, but I happen to think Aerial Advantage, when you can get it off, is probably the best removal card in the game we have now.
Yeah,
just because for one resource, you're basically affecting 3 dice. I mean, we were doing that with Beguile in the last set, paying 2. And, you know, with Beguile, we were only removing 1 die at the end of the day and affecting 2 others. This one can actually remove 2 and turn a
and it's only for 1 cost. Yeah, and this is what you were talking about with Red Heroes. When you control the battlefield and you spot red, it's like when you're really committed to red and you get the battlefield, they're gonna reward you big time.
Big time. Yeah. So Aerial Advantage is just an insane card that I think is way over the curve. And Pin Down, pretty straightforward. Both heroes and vehicles can use it. Heroes and villains can use it. But spot a vehicle to remove a die. Pretty simple, but plays very well into the vehicle theme that we see with Red.
Yep. Very good. And I think that in general, like if you're playing hero vehicles, now you can play a little more. If you wanted to play mono yellow, you could. But like back in the day, red was kind of where it was at with Poe Dameron and like Hera, and you know, you had the Y-wings and the Ghost and the U-wing, and all that was red. But now we got a lot more yellow vehicles. But if you want to play vehicles, red's where it's at, especially Hero Red.
No question.
And so kind of wrapping this up, Red Hero, like, why do you like to play this faction? What makes this faction and the way it's played or the mechanics so appealing to you?
Well, I actually think it's really flexible because and my own experience of playing the game has taught me this over the past years. As I mentioned before, R2-P2 is still my favorite deck in Destiny, and we talked about Hero Blue already. So combining Hero Blue's ability to shield and tank with Hero Red's ability to heal and kind of support the characters that way made for a very difficult time for your opponent to kill, right? And so that's something that I've always enjoyed, is just trying to sustain long enough to win the game and play sort of this war of attrition against my opponent. But then Red also offers you a different route because of all these battlefield mechanics. And so now, as I've started to dig into Red with yellow, which we're going to talk about here in a minute, the speed aspect of it has really come into play. And Red offers a lot of support for speed decks too. And as you said, it rewards you for having the battlefield, and it allows you to play some of these insane cards. So another one that we didn't mention here is Defensive Position, which, if you control the battlefield, lets you remove all dice showing a value of 2 or higher of your opponents. That's
such
pretty
a blow. It's such a blowout card when that happens.
Yeah. So Hero Red, it doesn't have a multitude of these really, really strong events. I mean, we're really showing the cream of the crop here, the best of the best. But if you get those off, they can be game changing, and that's what makes it such a compelling faction in my.
Yeah, blue and red are a really great combo, as you said, with R2P2, because you combine that mitigation from blue with the healing from red, and now we're finally kind of getting some good red mitigation. But all right, so awesome. Let's move into the last faction here. I'm actually going to turn this over now to Cooney, who's going to tell us about the yellow characters. Tell us, like, what do you think, Cooney? What do you think yellow hero is about? What do you think it brings to the table that's kind of different than blue and red?
Yellow's all about the tricks, like straight out tricks. They are super quick with all their ambushy actions. They can deal that damage before you even know what is going on. They're the best money makers in the game. Pretty much, I think almost all yellow characters may have at least one resource side on them. And I think they're the other ones that actually have a 2 resource sides, multiple characters with 2 resource sides. So it actually really helps ramp up your stuff really quick. But they also do have some of the lowest health in the game. So they are really, really squishy. Let's see. Generally, you want to try to keep them alive. And the way to do that is through their low-cost mitigations, whether it's just straight out dice removal with a particular edge on it that most of the time it involves you to have to sacrifice one of your dice to do so. Or there's a situational, much like Threaten, I believe it's called, where they have to either deal the damage to themselves if it's showing damage, or it has to get removed.
Right.
Let's see. But they have a lot of cheap ways to remove dice, and a lot of it is rerolls. Rerolls, yes, can be a double-edged sword if you're really unlucky.
There's also a lot of like kind of gambling, like taking a chance on things, like never
Yes.
telling the, like you gotta play a card and re-roll it. If you hit big, you hit big, that kind of stuff.
Exactly, but they are the quickest hitters, and they have some of the quirkiest utility, as we'll tell with one of the characters here. So yeah, I guess we'll start off with. Does anyone have anything to add by chance that they think yellow adds that I did not quite mention?
I think that covers it. They make money. They're fast. They got guns. They're either sometimes stealing your money, stealing your cards. That kind of stuff, right?
All right. So
if you're a dirty fool, you play yellow. No, just
Nate.
What? What? You leave Hondo out of this.
He will be brought into this very shortly. So we're going to start off with actually the new Leia Organa, or as she's mostly known as this form, Boosh. She is kind of a big thing right now.
Yes.
Especially paired with Yoda. I have seen multiple versions of this deck being made, but being able to Crime Lord on a hero is insane. It is one of the funnest decks I have seen played. I have yet to actually tutor it myself, so I don't think I actually have Crime Lords anymore. But
even without Crime Lord, like just her ability to two damage and and to every character, it's like the whole thermal detonator, which is a yellow upgrade too, and then just be able to steal resources.
Right, yeah. Through the special, as you said, that's a deal 2 damage to every opponent's character unless they pay 1 or 2. Instead, if you can spot a villain card. Now, does that mean that's only spot that's on play? So you'd have to play something like a support, like backup muscle, which is really popular in the deck.
Or Deja Vu.
Deja Vu is another good one. But essentially, she allows you to bring in 5 yellow villain cards. So it is,
and that kind of breaks the game, which is what yellow does, right?
Right. They take every advantage that they can get because they are squishy, except for Boosh. She's actually pretty healthy there. The next one, to be honest, I don't have a whole lot of play testing with, but I have a lot of play against with. I have lost many times to Nick's L337. What was it? The Lando deck, which is really gruesome. And with the fact that it was not quoted, what's the right word? Ruled. It was ruled the fact that she actually keeps both of her dice when she becomes a mod. Essentially, when she dies, she becomes a mod. And that is crazy with her 2 focus sides that she has. So that just like totally boosts up the possibilities that the yellow vehicle decks can just bring to the table. As I felt the punishment very harshly.
and like as you were saying, you know, this again breaks the game because you can't normally when a character's defeated, they're off the table, and yellow's hero here breaking the game again, doesn't die. Yellow's also hero is all about second chance, you know, and again breaking the game. So it's kind of interesting.
Yeah. They don't want to leave. They just don't want to leave. They want to like murder the game enough so that people are going to be screaming for erratas and stuff like that. But it's not going to happen.
One thing I wanted to also mention about Leet or L3 is that, you know, if you look at those sides of the focus and the double focus, it's kind of like Maz, Kanata from the Spirit. You know, they have some of the most powerful support characters. Cheap, low cost, but they bring so much utility, right?
Right. There's so much control with yellow, similar to what blue can bring, but in a different way. As we were talking about earlier about how each of them can diversify the game. This is how yellow does its shenanigans. It uses a mechanic that already exists and just basically spins it up on its head. So, yeah. As I said, last but not least, we have Hondo. I keep butchering his last name. Onaka. There we go. I have had a lot of fun with him and, oh goodness, Beckett. That is my favorite combo of the new set. Being able to basically make your opponent go as broke as possible and deal out as much damage as you can because they're broke is 100% fun.
And that is a very yellow villain, which we're going to talk about in the next episode. But Hondo is like right in the middle there. So it's kind of interesting to see his neutral elements kind of come through. He's got that focus side, which is more of like a hero thing, maybe. Yeah, it's interesting.
No, focus could be just a straight yellow as well. I mean, as you said, Maz is pretty much in there. I know a couple other yellow characters that have focus on it. They have a lot of diversity within their actual icons. Oh dear. Upgrades. Roguish Charm. Huh.
So basically, like Nifty Nick kind of helped us pick some of these yellows. So I can kind of help go through some of these examples.
Feel free with Roguish Charm. I don't think I have ever played this card.
You don't play a lot of yellow hero, but so I mean, yellow hero of course is all about resources and also disruption, speed. Roguish Charm is one from Legacies. It's a 2 cost, and it has a special that says remove a die showing damage, gain resources equal to the resource cost showing on it. Now it doesn't happen that often, but like if Vader hits a 4 with a resource cost, you can remove the die and then make 2 resources. So again, yellow bringing a lot of this ability to make a lot of money to the table. We didn't actually show the new Han Solo from the Solo set in the characters or talk about him, but he is a really great example of yellow hero where he's able to make money. Actually, he's a yellow neutral, my bad. But he, again, does bring to the table the ability to make money and do damage. We also got an example is the CR2 Heavy Blaster. It's a new hero yellow upgrade from Way of the Force. And it's interesting, there aren't that many hero yellow upgrades that are just hero yellow. There was the old DL44, which is, you know, from Awakenings, Han's blaster. Anyway, this blaster is kind of interesting because it rewards you for being fast, which yellow is good at. It's got a special that says to deal 2 damage to a character or 4 damage instead if an opponent has no dice in the pool. So if you've already rolled out, before them, you can quickly do damage or force them to roll out. Lastly, we have Mandalorian Van Braces, a 1-cost, super cheap a weapon upgrade, which is a neutral, and it has again something really cool and kind of broken in the sense that no other faction really does it that often. Is action, return this upgrade from play to its owner's hand. So just being able to quickly put those Van Braces back in your hand, put them back on your character, back in your hand. That's a really cool mechanic that's unique to kind of this yellow format, and it has no blanks, so pretty cool there.
That is my bane.
Yeah, really good against mill. So yellow is always about flexibility, I think, and that makes sense thematically with how bounty hunters are living out there on the outer rim trying to make it work. They do what they can with what they have, and that definitely translates in the way Star Wars Destiny plays. So Kuni, you want to go through these guys?
Sure. Maz's Vault, love this card. Again, plays upon the yellow strength, getting more money. Essentially, this does benefit both players, but if you're yellow, you're faster generally. And you can basically benefit from that extra resource faster than your opponent can. So I don't have a lot to say. It's really straightforward on that one. My new bane, after playing the Lando L327 deck, is the new Falcon. This thing is beast. Essentially, it has really big dice sides, and with Lando, you can pop this guy out for, 2 less with the if you control the battlefield that you bring in usually, or is it?
Yep.
Yeah. And also, it also has ambush. No, you can activate it if you have Lando. So,
right.
Again, focus on the speed. And this thing allows you to basically bring in the support, the escape craft, popping it on there for free. And that's from discard and hand. So that is super helpful. I learned the hard way that do not mill it if you see it, because it'll just pop right back out.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. It's you can't get, no matter what happens, they're getting in the escape craft,
Yes, and we don't have it up here, but I do want to talk about the escape craft quick. It is really annoying because you bring it on, then you action to remove it, and then you roll it out, and then you resolve the die, and then you power action to put it back on, and then you roll out the Falcon.
Yeah. Very.
Don't like it.
And that's, again, going back to this fact that breaking the game, it just changes the way the rules work, I love it.
Anything where you're allowed to use something again, whether it be a die, a card, or something else, is really, really good. So last is the Pirate Speeder Tank. I've had a bit of fun playing with this card. I don't quite recall what deck I was playing it in, but I don't think it matters because that special is bonkers. It does only have one side of it, but being able to do 3 things at once, Yoda, is really, really good. So basically this allows you to do 2 damage to a character, give a character 2 shields, and then take another action. Speed.
Yep. And this is a neutral, so it's like a heavy hitting vehicle for sure. Go some of the highest damage sides on a vehicle.
This is definitely a really good card to play in a vehicle deck.
All right, let's go through these events real quick. Corwin, do you want to talk a little bit about these? I figure you probably know a lot about these events.
Sure, yeah. I mean, these are good ones here. Obviously, easy pickings is the bane of a lot of people's existence in Destiny. Just being able to pay 1 resource and knock out 2 dice, which for a card named Easy Pickings is pretty easy to do. They they didn't make it too difficult on us to use it, but one of the premier removal cards in the game, and it's Hero Yellow that gets it, so that's pretty awesome.
I have a love-hate relationship with that card. 100%. Exactly. I never draw it when I need it because Cassian usually dies, and everyone always draws it on me.
It does have the spot yellow requirement, which can be tricky, and just makes for one more reason to go after the yellow character first. But
Right.
But it's definitely worth it. It's definitely worth the pursuit just to make sure that this card isn't played against you.
And yellow as a faction does have a lot of spot yellow cards, which is kind of interesting. You know, it's like they want to make sure your yellow guy's still out there in order to kind of get the benefits.
Definitely. However, these next two don't have that. Fortunately, the scruffy looking nerf herder. This is a great card. This is a really cool piece for any deck. It's definitely got a lot of applications for Mill, because Mill loves to go look at the hand and see what the opponent's working with, and then pull an option out of there. But even in other situations, I personally love this card in vehicle decks, and I've said it before on our podcast at Roll On. I think this is a lock right now in vehicle decks, because between Hyperspace Jump, which is also another busted hero yellow event,
Yeah.
and Fear and Dead Men, you got to make sure that those cards aren't played against you, because if they are, you're probably going to lose. And so Scruffy looking Nerf Herder is one of the most effective ways to target those events, or even other things. It can target anything. It can target a Vader's Fist. It could target a Rex's Blaster, whatever you want. And it can go in and pull those options from your opponent. So I really like this card in pretty much in any yellow deck.
Agreed.
I mean, it's very similar to kind of the way Thrawn works, in that it almost seems like it could be a red card too, just named differently, just kind of like a red villain sort of thing. But that's kind of what yellow skirts the edges of what it means to be sort of a hero or a villain too.
Yeah, it's very thematic in that sense, and it's very scoundrel-like, with Han and Leia there in the art. So I think they definitely nailed it with this card. And then Vandalize, Vandalize just being this piece that has. I mean, this is definitely a better version of. I mean, what did we see before? I think it was Sabotage, where you would pay the one, but then discard a number of cards from your hand to remove a support.
Right. From
now Vandalize, you're removing character dice, and you can also hit up. So I really like this as an option that both heroes and villains have access to. It's probably going to see a lot more play now with mods and vehicles running around and terrorizing people. So
yeah, for sure. Would you go so far as to say yellow? I mean, maybe even yellow hero are some of the cards that make you the most angry, the most frustrated.
I mean, Villain Blue does have a card named Feel Your Anger, Symbio, and a card named Anger, for that matter. So
true. But what would you rather? What makes you angrier? Hyperspace Jump, Second Chance, Easy Pickings, or Feel Your Anger?
Depends on how many blanks I roll, I guess.
Yeah, good point.
But no, it's a fair point. It's a fair point. Hero Yellow can really frustrate the opponent, and that's thematic, right? Because
it is.
The scoundrels, the bounty hunters, these are characters that just kind of, they don't care how it gets done, as long as it gets done, right? The end doesn't necessarily justify the means.
And they like to do a little cheating, right? Like
they're scrappy.
They don't care.
They're scrappy. And it's really cool that they have designed these cards with that in mind.
Yeah. So wrapping this up, I know this went a little longer than I wanted to, but wrapping this up, so those are the three faction identities in Heroes, and I think we did a pretty good job of just kind of outlining what each one brings to the table. You've got blue with their shields, their ability to turn dice, melee sides, a lot of utility in some of the support characters. They can definitely tank out. You've got red with their ranged dice, their vehicles, a lot of ability to do really powerful things if you control the battlefield, and then they still also have the ability to focus dice. And then you have yellow, which makes tons of money, can do all kinds of broken things in the game, changing things from being mods to upgrades. So if you really want to just kind of experiment and do more interesting things, like variations on different things, and yellow's for you. What do you guys think, just wrapping this episode up, we talked about blue and red combining together and what they bring to the table. How does blue and yellow combine together, or red and yellow combine together in the hero faction to make something different?
I mean, Poe Hondo is one of my favorite decks I've ever played, and that's just plain nasty.
Yeah, it was very good.
Yeah.
So, like, you know, Hondo, for you in that deck, like, Hondo brought the money to the table, right? And damage, but disruption.
And damage. But yeah, Hondo brought that, putting the choices on the other player if it was, you know, they wanted to give me the money, but then they couldn't play their resources from hand. Or if they wanted to eat the 3 damage from Hondo, so they could play their upgrade and stuff instead of giving me the money. So you put that, you know, you have to make the other player kind of decide what they want to do and how they're going to play their deck differently.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. I think that, you know, Hondo being a neutral, of course, he adds, you know, a lot of more, kind of almost a villain side to that table. And Corwin, I know you played a new deck that you've been playing around with, which is Poe and Han, the new Han, and those are red, yellow heroes. What do you see as, like, kind of the biggest elements of that deck and how the faction influences that?
Yeah, the new Han is so awesome, guys. I got to tell you, he's a really, really great character for 15 at Elite. And it's really cool because, you know, but before I was playing Cassian with Poe, and now I've just kind of naturally graduated to Han. And it's because of what we talked about here with Hero Red and Yellow both supporting speed. So events like hit and run, quick draw, drop in, you know, these are things that you can use to activate characters quickly and then resolve their dice. The MVP of the deck to me is Impulsive, which is, we didn't discuss, but it's that 0 cost hero event, ambush, resolve a die. It's amazing with Poe's 2 focus or a special, lets you flip into damage and resolve. There's just so much speed and action cheating going on in that deck. And then, of course, what does it do after that? It hyperspace jumps. So
Yep.
It basically rolls in, does its thing, and then jumps out of there and doesn't allow the other deck to really do much. And that's an archetype that I think has a little bit of metal right now, potentially with a lot of the decks that are having success being on the slower end. You know, I think there's room for that to succeed. So that's been really fun for me. Hondo is also a great pair for Poe. And I think the reason Hondo has worked more so with heroes than villains is simply because of the special chaining mechanic.
Yep.
And that's something that the villains don't really do, but heroes do. So Yoda and Poe especially can help Hondo get to those special sides and really punish your opponent.
Yeah, I think that right now in the meta with, you know, even though that vehicle decks are very strong, they're actually a little faster than we're used to. They're more like round 2 instead of round 4 vehicle decks. But yeah, I think that's kind of why you also see Blue Hero not doing as well, because we know Blue Hero is tanky, but we also know that it takes a while for them to kind of get ramped up in order to really do their damage. And in this current meta, it's hard for them to kind of take off without losing a character one or first or second round. But anyway, hope you guys enjoyed this podcast. I really want to thank Corwin Sanchez for his time and for coming out and giving us a lot of great information on the faction that he loves so much, as well as his other feedback. Definitely go check out his podcast, Roll On. They have a new episode out this week. You can find them on iTunes or just Google Roll On podcast Star Wars Destiny, and you'll find them there. And I want to thank Cooney and Nathan for coming on, and listen to our next episode, which will be coming out in a couple weeks, about the villain factions. We really hope that this helped you kind of get a better idea of the different factions in Destiny if you're new, or if you're a longtime player of this game, maybe it give you some insight onto how to play these different factions better or what they bring to the table. Definitely look us up at facebook.com/T3 Gaming Tabletop. We're also on YouTube. We put out in real life game videos from our Chico, California local gaming store every week. Check us out at youtube.com/T3gamingpodcast. And we are now finally on iTunes and Google Play, Stitcher, and also Spotify for the podcast. So check us out there. Corwin, I want to leave it to you to, if you want to do any quick shout outs to your, feel free to do so.
Well, of course, I got to shout out my brother, Kevin. He's been a very loyal and amazing co-host. So I really appreciate him and you guys too at T3 for having me on. Your content's awesome. Both of us watch it all the time, and we really enjoy your videos. So keep up the great work.
Well, thank you very much. It's awesome to connect and be part of this community. We appreciate you taking the time to, and definitely look forward to another podcast here. Thank you guys for listening, and we'll see you next time on T3's Cantina Brawl.
Later, guys.